It is undoubtable that for the last number of years, Barcelona Femeni have been the gold standard in the women's game, with a slew of trophies and some of the most talented players in women's football, from the likes of Alexia to Aitana to Mappy, Pina, and even Battier. There is no shortage of skill on the Spanish side. But we're sensing a shift and it cannot be ignored. There has been a question floating around the internet, especially amongst Barcelona fans. I even got a comment on one of my last videos discussing the issues at Barcelona currently. But the question is, why does it suddenly feel like Barcelona women are being forced to do less and not more? Fans have been quick to notice that seemingly most of the contracts at Barcelona are all expiring around the same time, specifically summer 2026, and I explored this in my last video. The squad is thinner than ever, and for a team that has won everything and even set attendance records, they are quietly being restricted in some way. Now, the answers to the questions aren't going to be found by looking at the team or the players. We need to delve deeper into Barcelona as a whole, looking at the men and the women, and focus on the financial side. What is happening at Barcelona isn't about footballing failure. It's ultimately about who will be protected when a club is in financial crisis, and who will be the first to suffer due to this. Now let's explore Barcelona's financial reality. The financial problems Barcelona are currently facing aren't new, but they are still very real and need to be discussed, at least in order to give fans answers as to why a shift is seemingly happening on the women's side. The club is carrying billions in long-term debt. Much of this is due to heavy spending on the men's side. Now, in order to stabilise this, Barcelona sold off future revenue streams, restructured wages, and made short-term fixes just to stay at the top level. Now, what we have to explore is this. In Spain, spending limits are governed by La Liga financial controls. These controls don't just apply to the men's team, though. They apply to the entire club, which in turn has directly impacted the women's side. So even though Barcelona women are incredibly successful and for the most part sustainable compared to the men, they are still tied to the same financial ceiling. This means when Barcelona need to cut costs, balance wages, or avoid breaching limits, every sector of the club is impacted. However, it's not equal. Now let's explore why the women feel it first. This is the part that is uncomfortable to discuss and downright frustrating, to be honest. When Barcelona are forced to choose between protecting the men or the women, the priority is clear. The men's team ultimately drives global broadcasting revenue. They also carry prestige and anchor sponsorship deals. Ultimately, the men become shielded by the club, whereas the women are managed more cautiously. Now, in no way do I want to speculate or suggest that the club doesn't value the women's team, because we know that's not the case. But it does mean that financial flexibility is taken from the area seen more as adjustable. This has become more and more obvious through things such as contracts expiring at the same time instead of staggered renewals. There has been limited external recruitment, and players are ultimately leaving. Barcelona women aren't being dismantled, but they are being constrained. And this matters because dominance doesn't last forever without investment. Now let's discuss the myth of they're fine, they're winning. Since looking into this situation, I've noticed a common trend, which always seems to be people suggesting, but they're still winning. What's the problem? The problem is timing. Barcelona has essentially built a dynasty through long-term squad planning, internal development, and financial backing. What we're seeing now, though, is a pause or maybe even a step back, while other clubs are clearly accelerating way ahead. Clubs in England and even France are increasing their wages. Squads are getting deeper and rotation is improving for the most part. Barcelona, for the most part, are being asked to maintain excellence with tighter margins and less room for error. This is in no way sustainable, especially in the women's game, where player movement is accelerating quickly. Now, is this a warning for women's football? That's the question. This situation raises a much bigger question, and not just for Barcelona women, but for women's football as a whole. Should elite women's teams be financially tied to the men's teams that may be poorly managed? Barcelona Women are undoubtedly one of the strongest brands in women's football, yet they are suffering the consequences to decisions they didn't even make. This ultimately sets a very worrying precedent, because if Barcelona Women can be limited this way, what does that mean for other women's teams that are attached to unstable men's teams? The success of the women's game increasingly depends on autonomy, not just association. So what happens next? Now, this is by no means a collapse story. Barcelona Women are still elite, we can all see that. They are still an attractive club for players and still capable of winning everything. They have some of the best players in the world still in their squad. The question is, can they keep them? Right now, it's clearly a transition moment, and what they do next says a lot. The next few seasons will tell us whether Barcelona will reinvest once finances stabilise, or whether the women's team remains a financial pressure valve. It will also tell us whether clubs finally start treating women's football as a long-term asset, not a department that absorbs the shock when something goes wrong elsewhere. Barcelona Women are ultimately not failing. They're paying a price for a decision made elsewhere out of their control. A price for structural rules that don't yet protect the women's game, and a price that could shape the future of women's football across Europe. If you want me to look deeper into another club or even a specific player affected by a situation like this, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.